Hello, everybody. So now we're participating in the most important session of the World Business Angels Investment Forum. Since the global economic crisis, we have seen a very interesting change in the approach of the stock exchanges to SME markets. The London Stock Exchange Group is also very keen to open their doors to SMEs, scale-ups, and high-growth businesses. So now we are going to hear about the main idea behind this changing mindset from Luca Peirano, the CEO of the Elite program. He's now going to tell us more about this unique program proposed by the London Stock Exchange Group to foster the high-growth business environment. So now, Mr. Peirano, I would like to ask you, why is that stock exchanges today are so keen to open their doors to SMEs and high-growth businesses?
Thank you, first of all. And we are very glad to share these views and the experience with you in this very important contest. Every stock exchange in the last few years started to take a lot more in consideration SMEs, not least because job creations, innovation, and further growth comes from SMEs. In the last 10 years, no one job has been created by the so-called blue chips, the large corporations. The majority of the propulsion in the economy came from SMEs. And therefore, stock exchanges realized that the focus should have been shifted a bit more in the direction of smaller companies. London actually started very early, probably earlier than others. 20 years ago was created AIM, which still today is the most successful market segment for SMEs at the global level. Nevertheless, we all have learned throughout this process that mostly because of the crisis of the recent years, regulation started again to become a burden, a problem. And now, given the stratification of regulation, the objective possibility of making a process easy for a small companies is not there anymore. And therefore, we started to create options and alternative to companies. AIM still remain the most successful markets. But we also had the experience of launching AIM in Italy, an Italian version of AIM, and we went through the same process. And what you have to consider is that in the UK there is an ecosystem in place, which is not easy to replicate elsewhere, based on hundreds of brokers, lawyers, specialized on small caps, analysts, and you just don't create overnight a similar ecosystem. And the successful markets are possible only if you have this ecosystem in place, which takes years to be created. The only option you have is to invent something different if you're not in either US or UK, which goes in the direction of the simplification of the process for SMEs. But more in general, SMEs are and will be for many years, especially high-growth SMEs, a clear focus for stock exchanges.
Thank you, definitely. And what exactly is Elite? How does it work?
Elite was born exactly for this reason. When we realized that, notwithstanding a very successful market, still far too many companies were lagging behind, were not coming to the market anymore because it's too expensive, just too difficult, sometimes even to understand. We decided to take the other way around, and we created an ecosystem that was not a regulated market, with the ability of being designed on the needs of SMEs, whether high growth or traditional family-owned businesses. And the idea was to create something that instead of creating barriers and a sense of anxiety, was designed to lower down the barriers and encourage companies to come. In our experience, the majority of companies, especially if family-run, they see the stock exchange as a black box, not easy to understand. Most of the people you meet with bankers dressed in a very strange way, whose terminology is very far from your day-to-day terminology, who doesn't speak about business, they speak about finance and returns. On Elite, we do exactly the opposite. To give an example, my team is not even allowed to talk about IPO. As far as the entrepreneur and the businessman is not starting to mention the IPO. And this is a way to create the appropriate climate for them to feel comfortable with the idea of raising capital. And then they are entrepreneurs. As soon as you find and you're able to attract an entrepreneur and you let him understand that raising capital can be a great weapon to grow up the business, they're normally much smarter than us and quicker, and they do the rest.
Yeah. And how many companies have joined the program so far?
So far, we have 500 companies from 25 countries, and the program is composed of 3 different processes. One is training that we organize with the top business schools in Europe. The second one is coaching. We talk to every single company. We try to identify the weaknesses and the strengths, and we try to help these companies to grow even further. And finally, there is the capital raising element. So as soon as they are ready to go, we help them, if not going public, to raise capital pre-IPO, and we remain neutral with respect to the funding destination. It can be debt, convertible, equity. And also, we are neutral with respect to the final listing venue, if they want to go public. And this is very new for a stock exchange. So to give you an example, if a Turkish company joins Elite, we have 3 Turkish companies on Elite, and they want to go on the Istanbul Stock Exchange, we are fine. We facilitate the company wherever it is its final decision and destination.
That's great. Why did London Stock Exchange Group decide to launch this program across Europe?
We started in our domestic markets, UK and Italy. But then we immediately realized that while we see boundaries and frontiers, entrepreneurship just don't have any frontier. So entrepreneurs, they are the same, whether they are French, Italian, UKs, or Turkish. They just need support, visibility, capital, networking. And we humbly started to promote Elite in Europe, and today we have companies from 25 countries.
How do you select the participants? Do they have to pay to be part of Elite?
First, they have to be good, and maybe then they have also to pay. But first, they have to be good. They have to be ambitious. So we have some financial criteria that can be, of course, managed as exceptions when appropriate. But the single most important feature we look into when you decide whether to accept or not a company is the level of ambitions and the appetite for further growth. So we are not looking into companies maybe successful, but they are maybe just managing a steady growth and not planning any particular initiative. While we might accept a company that maybe is losing money at the moment, but they have a great technology and they want to go global.
How do companies generally perform after they join Elite?
That's a very interesting question. We monitor a number of KPIs from financials, of course, capital raising. More in general, any transaction that takes place after the program, and also a little bit more difficult, some improvements in the governance. And we are happy to say that 40% of the companies within 24 months perform some sort of transactions. We had so far 270 financial transactions on the program, which is remarkable, considering that these are all private companies. And therefore, it's a very, very active segment. On the governance side, one of the requirements before getting the final certificate as an Elite company is that they have to review a bit the governance and make it normally a bit more adherent to what is the expectation of a public market. Even though they are not public, we want them to behave like they were publicly listed companies.
Can Elite also be a useful program for investors and advisors?
Yes, of course. It's definitely useful if they want to look for new investment opportunities. I believe that it can be also useful for them in terms of education. Education is important for companies, but it's also important for investors sometimes. They are normally a little more reluctant than companies to absorb training and education because, of course, they sit on the cash, so they can set the rules. But we have experienced that if you manage to let the two parties come a little bit together, rather than asking only to the companies the effort, the final result is going to be more productive.
As well as attracting new companies, how will you continue to develop the platform?
We now have a plan to make Elite global through a licensing mechanism. So in Europe, we operate directly, as we are very present in Europe. Outside of Europe, as we believe that companies and SMEs are very local animals, we tend to work with local institutions. Normally our first counterpart is a stock exchange, so we try to define an agreement with the local stock market. And if not, we can also work with the likes of technology and business park or industrial confederations, someone who is technically speaking plugged in the system and understand the local ecosystem.
And how can companies find out more about Elite?
Calling me, or we have a website which is accessible through either the London Stock Exchange website or the Elite website, and therefore it's very easy and transparent to get information everywhere.
I also checked the website and it's really clear to understand and it's a great website. I recommend everyone check it. Thank you so much, Mr. Peirano.
Thank you.
And please don't miss this opportunity because Mr. Peirano is here ready to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. No questions? Okay. So we have listened Luca Peirano from the London Stock Exchange Group. Thank you so much. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you.